Hey guys, my name is Joe Proulx, and welcome to Joe Proulx Music Reviews. This is a freaking thing now. This is what I'm going to be doing every now and then from now on, along with my regular videos that I've been putting out since this channel has existed. I'm going to be doing music reviews of whatever I want to review. You can suggest in the comments of my videos what you want me to review if you want to. And yeah, let's get going with this review. This is my first review for my first review of my career. I'm going to be doing a review of the new Bonsai Trees EP, Live Free and Die. Bonsai Trees was formerly a Connecticut-based rock trio. Now they have turned into a rock duo, and this is their first release of music since their 2013 debut record titled Minimalist, and I was a pretty huge fan of that record. I stumbled across the band by finding them on Bandcamp when they released a self-titled debut EP which featured 4 songs that appeared on that record, and I just felt like even though the band maybe didn't have the most original sound to them, they definitely kind of indebted themselves to a very 90s alt-rock sound. They definitely had some songwriting skills. I mean, just some catchy hooks and some pretty anthemic choruses on that EP and across that record as well. And I felt like for a indie rock band that is handling most of their own production, the production was actually pretty good. It wasn't amazing, but it was pretty, the guitar tones on that record were pretty fantastic. I like the drums sounded pretty good on a lot of tracks, especially a track like Finally Being Honest With Myself. I love that track. And other tracks as well, especially the tracks that appeared on the EP. Songs like Shovels or Ronald Reagan or Sad or I Hate the District. I was really looking forward to listening to this EP, especially because they had another single that dropped. They also dropped a split single with a band called Mad Blackbirds, and the song was called Hurricane Song, and I freaking loved it. I thought it was their most ambitious song yet. It was over 5 minutes long, their longest song yet, and it just seemed like there was just so many parts to this song, and the song structure was more expansive than I was used to the band putting into their tracks. And even though they did drop a kind of lackluster single with the song Marina at the beginning of this year, I thought that that song was decent. It appears on this EP, and this song really, I think it could have been a really good tune. However, the band really wants to make sure this song still has a rock vibe, even though it is a very, very poppy song just in its core, I think, because they tried to make it a rock song with the really heavy guitar distortion on this track, as well as the pretty lively drumming on this track, and it just doesn't really play to the song's strengths. I think this song could have been great if they really made it more simple, more of a lighter tone to the song. I think it could have been a great tune. However, they kind of muck it up with all this guitar distortion and stuff like that, and just needing the song to have a rock vibe about it. But I was still looking forward to listening to this EP, and it luckily dropped early, and I was able to give it an early listen, and for sure, there is some definite good stuff going on with this EP. I don't like it as much as Minimalist or as their debut EP, but I feel like it has some stuff going for it. The guitar tones that this band works with on this album are still great, especially on tracks like Force Me, the title track off this thing, or the opening track on here, She Ain't Coming Back. The drumming is still solid, coming from Nick Skull, even though the bassist of this band has left the equation, and actually lead singer and guitarist James Fearson is doing all the bass lines on this record. I still think that he does a pretty good job, and even though he's not the best guitar player, he still shows a lot of passion in his vocal delivery, and he still has a knack for catchy songwriting, especially on tracks like She Ain't Coming Back, which is the shortest track on here, though I think it's the punchiest number on this entire thing. And it's just got, man, a pretty solid chord progression, a really good chord progression actually on this track, and again, just a pretty catchy refrain in the verses of this track. It's a pretty freaking killer tune to kick off this record, and it segues right into the second track, Force Me, on this EP really well, actually. And again, the guitar tone on Force Me is awesome. And even though this track does have a chorus where the opening line of it really kind of makes me cringe super hard, I've kind of learned to deal with it because it is a great tune. It does have a lot of good stuff going for it. It's a very anthemic chorus on this track. It just has too much going for it that I like, that I can't let this one line kind of ruin it for me. And so as I'm listening to the first two tracks from here, even though maybe the production is a little bit more shaky and a little bit less refined and cleaned up and synced up as on their full-length debut, I still think that this is actually pretty good. But I feel like the next three tracks, the other three tracks on this 5-song EP, kind of take this EP that could have been very, very solid and takes it into a category where it's just kind of whatever. The song Cheer that comes in, the third track on here, I mean, there is just so much about this track that I just don't like. The band, it seems like on this track they're trying to add some new instrumentation to the mix on this thing. I think there's like a buried trumpet line in there. They say that there's trumpet on this EP in the liner notes on their Bandcamp, so I'm guessing that's what I'm hearing. There's some extra buried keyboards on this track too. However, that's the key word right there that kind of makes these added instruments on the song just kind of whatever, is that they're so buried in this mix, they don't really stick out that well, and they don't really bring the song the character that this song could have had. I mean, the song itself, I'm not even all that crazy about. The song just kind of seems like this usual style of this band, this sort of 90s alt-rock, indie rock kind of sound, mixed with like some Two Door Cinema Club kind of a riff, or maybe some Strokes influence a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I love those two bands. However, I feel like on this track it's just too much of a cornball. And even though the song has a kind of sticky chorus, it's just everything other than that chorus is just so meh. And then we get the fourth track on here, Marina, which is another track that's just kind of meh. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's just kind of whatever. And then the title track comes in and finishes this thing off. It's the longest song on here, and while it isn't a terrible track, and I do kind of like the guitar riff, it just feels a little mild, you know? It's just like the chorus on here is just kind of subdued. There's not a lot of vocals on the hook of this track. It just seems like we're supposed to focus on this guitar riff, which, I mean, is pretty good, but I don't think it should really be the centerpiece of this track, honestly. And it just kind of ends this EP off with, I mean, I guess kind of a high note in the way that it is a longer track, but I mean, it's nothing too climactic or anything. It doesn't excite me all that much, and that's the thing. That's pretty much what I think about this EP. That's kind of my opinion on it. I think it had the potential to be great. I think it had a couple of good songs that started off, but there's just too much in the middle and the back end of this EP that I just cannot get behind. And not only that, but the great production that I felt like, I mean, like, their production chops was great, especially on a track like Hurricane Song, or on the EP that they dropped, or on their debut album at a lot of points. The production chops on those releases is not here. The production here feels kind of muddy, kind of badly mixed at a lot of points, especially on Cheater. It just makes this thing just not as fulfilling to listen to as their debut EP or their debut record. It's just not as fun of a record. It's not as catchy of a record. It's not as powerful of a record, in my opinion. The production kind of weighs down this EP. Some of the ideas don't work out that well. There's just a bunch of things holding this EP back from me really liking it. It's definitely not the worst thing in the world at all. I mean, it still has a lot of things going for it. Like, the first two tracks are really solid tracks for Bonsai Trees. I just feel like they could have done some more interesting stuff with this EP. My score for this EP, my favorite tracks, my least favorite tracks, are going to be in the description of this video. Go check it out if you want to. Yeah, but I was just not really feeling this thing, unfortunately. I wanted to review this thing as my first review because I was really looking forward to it, but yeah, unfortunately it wasn't all that great. Getting away from that, what did you guys think of this EP? If you haven't listened to it, I'll put a link in the description for you guys to go check it out on their Bandcamp page. And tell me what you guys thought of it. Did you, do you like it? Do you kind of not like it? What, I don't know. Like, what's your opinion on it? Because I wasn't really feeling it. That's it. My name is Joe Proulx. This has been Joe Proulx Music Reviews. And I